Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this College of Social Sciences and Humanities Meet Your Major International Affairs, Asian Studies, Africana Studies, and Spanish Q&A session. My name is Natalie Reader, and I am the Senior Coordinator of Undergrad Recruitment Programs and External Engagement for the College of Social Sciences and Humanities, or CSSH for short. I am joined today by my colleagues that you see on the screen, who are faculty and students from the International Affairs, Asian Studies, Africana Studies, and Spanish programs, as well as one of our CSSH co-op faculty who works with students from these majors. In just a moment, I will turn it over to the panelists to introduce themselves before we open the floor for Q&A. But you can feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A box throughout the session, and we will answer as many of your questions as we can. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Professor Nicole Aljo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Professor Nicole Aljo. I am the Director of Africana Studies, as well as Associate Professor of English and Africana Studies. My research and scholarship focuses on 18th and 19th century writing by and about Black people, with a particular focus on the Caribbean. The courses I've taught, so I teach courses, I teach early African American literature, I teach Black Boston and literature, I also teach contemporary post-colonial literature and, funnily enough, 18th century British literature. In terms of the Africana Studies program, just to give you a brief kind of overview, it's an interdisciplinary program. We're pretty small. We have 6 full-time faculty members and one part-time faculty member, but we have about 20 to 25 affiliated faculty members across campus. So these are folks who are not currently in the department, but are in other units across campus who teach classes in Africana Studies. We have a couple of areas that are area of particular strength. Those areas are culture, gender, and digital studies, global medicine and health equity, law, public policy, and social justice, and finally, urban, environmental, and natural resources. And then I think I turn it over to Yuli.
Thank you, Nicole. Hello, my name is Yuli Diamanti-Karanum. I'm assistant teaching professor in the International Affairs program and faculty advisor. I am originally actually from Greece, and most of our faculty in international affairs is coming from another country. And if not, the topic of study and research that they have is concentrated in another region of the world. So we are a very international group of faculty. My particular research interests are in diasporas, and especially the relationship between the Greek state and the Greek American community, and more general in national identity, ethnic identity, nationalism, and ethnic conflict. The courses I'm teaching are the 2 core courses in the International Affairs major, which are Globalization and International Affairs and International Conflict and Negotiation. I'm also teaching, depending on the need, from semester to semester, the research methods in international affairs. International affairs is a very exciting and dynamic major because we study the world. We study global affairs as they happen, but we also study them in terms of their historical dimension and overall in terms of their complexity, because we know the world is a very complex place, but also a very interesting place to study. So our major is quite flexible. We have some core courses, but beyond that, you can shape the particular choice of courses depending on your interest in terms of global topics and in terms of your interest in terms of region. We include anything from global health, which is particularly relevant these days, to global economics, poverty and underdevelopment, and conflict and international negotiation, and a variety of other global topics that fall under the category of global studies. And Natalie, you can take over.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Reader, and I'm a Spanish and International Affairs student at Northeastern University. And I am actually a graduating senior, so I'll be graduating in a little less than a month. And then I will be continuing with my master's in international affairs as well at Northeastern, graduating next spring. I have loved the experience at Northeastern. I've taken a number of international opportunities, with starting with the Dialogue of Civilizations, which is a summer study abroad program after my freshman year in Spain, walking the Camino de Santiago with a professor and a group of about 16 students. And then my second year, the spring semester, I studied abroad in Argentina. I was then planning, have done co-ops at the Museum of Fine Arts, looking at culture and art and how it relates to, international affairs. And then I've also done 2 part-time co-ops, one at a community center in Roxbury, working with local Boston residents, and one at a climate-focused writing and advocacy group, where I've really gotten to look and expand my interest in climate change. Which is why for my master's, I'll be doing a focus in sustainability studies. And so that's a little bit about me, and I'll pass it on to Andrew.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Small. I'm a second-year Asian Studies major with a minor in political science. And most of my experiences related to the Asian Studies program outside of just core classes have been through the research opportunities that I've had. So since the beginning of my freshman year, I've been a research assistant under the guidance of a political science professor named Professor Daniel Aldrich. And through working with him and other PhD students, most of my research has been on municipal, prefectural, and national recovery policies in Japan after the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. And the experiential learning component of Northeastern has definitely come into that a lot. So I've had a lot of hands-on experience in terms of data collection and analysis, and practice with writing papers, and just a hands-on experience in the research process. And at the moment, I'm also on temporarily remotely on co-op with a nonprofit organization called Safe Cash Japan, which is a nonprofit based out of Tokyo, doing research on decontamination policy in the municipalities surrounding the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. And I think I'll pass it on to Joni.
Thank you, Andrew. And welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Joanna LaMacchia. I'm a senior co-op faculty in CSSH. I work with Asian Studies majors, international affairs, political science, and security and resilience studies. In my role as co-op faculty, there are 3 kind of primary areas that I work. One is I teach the course that's a prereq for every student who goes out on co-op. It's the Intro to Professional Development course. I was fortunate to have Andrew in my course a year ago and work with him. And in the course, we basically go over everything that will be helpful for students through their co-op search process, as well as their professional development. So writing a professional resume, cover letters, reference pages, interviewing tips, doing research in the field, etc. I also advise students throughout their tenure at Northeastern. So once you do your first co-op, you don't have to take the course again, but you would work with me and we could strategize and plan for your co-op process. And then lastly, all of the co-op faculty develop positions. So we develop the co-op positions for your majors. And in CSSH, I'd like to just kind of point out that we've taken a lot of opportunity because so many of our students are interested in global co-ops, as Andrew indicated, and Natalie, you indicated in terms of your dialogues and interests. And so we've developed a lot of global co-op positions for our students. And I'll just wheel off a couple of these or some of these so you can get a sense of what's being offered. But certainly for Asian Studies majors, we have Andrew self-developed a co-op at SafeCast in Japan. That means he worked to find an opportunity, and then we worked together to develop that. We have opportunities in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia, the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations in New York. And then for IAF poli-sci majors, we have co-ops in Geneva with the UN and Interpeace. We have positions at the Global Resilience Institute here in Boston at Northeastern, European Public Law Institute in New York, and Global Health Corps also in New York City, just to give you a sense of some of these wonderful opportunities. And our role and our kind of way of working with you is to really maximize your opportunities here at Northeastern and experiential learning. So we encourage students to do dialogues prior to their co-op, so you can understand different contexts and maybe go back to different areas and take a deeper dive for your co-op, and really just take advantage of the wonderful opportunities that we have here for you at Northeastern. So I won't go on anymore, but just I'm excited to be here today and to meet with you, and we'll follow up with any questions. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So now that you have been introduced to all of our panelists, we'll start the live Q&A portion of the session. So we have some questions coming into our Q&A box, and please feel free to continue submitting your questions there. So the first question, so I'll direct this to Yuli and Joni, but anyone else can feel free to weigh in. Can you talk about the difference between the international affairs major that is offered at Northeastern and how that might differ from an international relations major that might be offered elsewhere?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this. Our international affairs major is interdisciplinary. This means that it includes the international relations dimension, which normally is heavily centered on political science. We have an equal mix of political science, economics, history, anthropology, sociology. So it is a more interdisciplinary major. The other, compared to the classic international relations majors that are associated mostly with political science, the other distinguishing characteristic is our strong emphasis on experiential learning. And in the case of international affairs, this takes the form of global experiential learning. So our particular program is the program that created, it was Dennis Sullivan, a professor in international affairs, that created the Dialogues of Civilization program, which involves taking students abroad under the guidance of Northeastern faculty to study at different regions around the world for a short period of time during the summer. So immersing these students into the culture, the politics, the economy of those places. The Dialogues of Civilization is one way in which we satisfy, or our students satisfy, the global experiential learning requirement. And if they do not want to go that way, they can also satisfy that requirement through a study abroad, a global co-op, which is also a very distinctive characteristic of Northeastern, and Joanna can talk more about it. But I would say that it is these two distinguishing characteristics. And in addition to these, the fact that our program is very flexible. Besides some core required courses, you can build your program to reflect your particular interests in terms of global topics and your particular interests in terms of regional interests, or the particular place of the world that you would like to study more in depth. And Joanna can talk more about the global co-op, which is one of the ways in which you satisfy the global experiential learning requirement that is associated with our major.
Thanks, Yuli. You did a great job answering that. I'll just add that, as you said, and as I indicated in my introduction, that we really place a large emphasis in this college on developing global positions. And we work very closely with our academic faculty, who lead a lot of these dialogue programs, so that it's a very integrated experience. So as I said, you might go out on a dialogue to, say, the Balkans with Professor Sullivan and get a sense of the area and the history and the context and all of that. And you might develop a certain interest or a particular something you want to take a deeper dive into. And so we have co-op opportunities there that you can then go back to that area and go more in depth for 4 to 6 months in working for an organization that's doing, you know, something in the field that you're very interested in. So I would say, just to reinforce what Yuli said, that our program is very interdisciplinary. So that means IAF majors might be working in environmental studies as well, and they might be working in history, in archives. And so there's a lot of combined majors and emphasis. And then it's a very integrated program combining academic and experiential learning.
Great, thank you both. So we have one question that's specifically for Andrew, but I'm going to ask others to weigh in as well. So Andrew, how did you come to take part in the research that you are involved in with your professor? And then kind of a question more broadly for everyone, is it easy to be involved in research opportunities with professors in the international affairs, Spanish and Africana Studies programs?
I think my experience was a little bit unique because the summer before I came to Northeastern, before I moved from Tokyo, Professor Aldrich was actually leading his dialogue that goes to Tohoku and Fukushima, and was giving a research presentation at the University of Tokyo at the time, which I just kind of happened to attend and happened to talk to him, or kind of like make that connection, and got his email address and stuff. But I think a lot of it is just whether the faculty member is looking for research assistance. And usually if they do, I think, like I said before, the experiential learning aspect of Northeastern is definitely pronounced in CSSH, and definitely my experience has just been with political science, but I would assume with the entire college as well. So I think professors are definitely eager to get undergraduate students involved with research and develop those skills kind of through experiential learning. So it's, long story short, it's just kind of hit up the professor and ask whether they're looking for research, I guess, is what I'd recommend.
Can I add something here from the international affairs faculty perspective? There are opportunities all the time. Faculty are research active. They're working on very exciting research projects, from artificial intelligence in war, like Professor Garcia's work, to environmental justice and so on globally. So they are using undergraduate students systematically as research assistants in addition to graduate students. So there are opportunities at different times with different professors. And there's the Office of Undergraduate Research at Northeastern that also helps match you with professors who are looking for a research assistance, or you can directly contact a particular professor. If maybe now they have no particular need to have someone assist them with the research, maybe next semester or by next year, there will be an opening as students graduate. Okay.
I'd like to just add, as a faculty member, I work pretty extensively with undergraduates doing research, not only my own research, but their own research as well. So I'll be working with, just to talk about a current project. I'll be working, I direct the Early Black Boston Digital Almanac, which is an online resource that collects information about early Black Boston's history that's available online for educational use, K through 12, as well as the college venue. One of my undergraduates is going to be working on a project this summer where she's going to be translating some of the exhibits that undergraduates at Northeastern have created for that website. And she will be turning their exhibits into material that can be used in the K through 12 classroom. I'm also working with this particular student on writing an article that's going to appear in a published journal. So there are a variety of opportunities for research. And as Andrew says, I would encourage you to approach your professors because you never know, even if they say they might not be looking at research assistants for the moment. They might need them in the future. So it's important to always be in touch.
Great, thank you. Keeping with the theme of, unless Natalie, if you wanted to weigh in on research that you've done, but okay, cool. So keeping with the theme of experiential learning, we did have a question about dialogues. So I know Natalie, you've done dialogues, but anyone else can feel free to weigh in as well. Are dialogues competitive or difficult to get? What does that process look like for a student who's interested in a dialogue of civilizations? And maybe in case anyone is not familiar, if you can talk a little bit about what a dialogue of civilizations is.
Yeah, I'm happy to go ahead and start answering that question. So I would say, you know, dialogues, just like any other program at Northeastern, there's so many interested students that you might not always get your first choice. But the beauty of these half summer study abroad programs is there is such a variety that there are sure to be plenty of dialogues that interest you. And so I think the really great part about these programs is you're studying in another country with Northeastern professors. So it's sort of like a way to dip your toe into the international experience without the full, you know, unknowns of studying abroad or even doing a co-op abroad. And so that's why many freshman students after their freshman year will go on dialogues, but you can do them anytime throughout your Northeastern experience. And I will say my first dialogue was in Spain, and before the pandemic, I was actually planning on going on another dialogue in Vietnam and Cambodia about food writing. So as you can see, even my personal experiences, there's just such a wide range of classes you can get that, especially for international affairs, I've found always like you can find a way to make it count for your major and really integrate it into your course studies.
Great, awesome, thank you, Natalie. So I also have another question kind of just generally about the curriculum for these majors. So how have you found, so, you know, students, you can weigh in based on your experiences so far, and then for our faculty members here, you can weigh in as well. How flexible is the curriculum for the majors that you're here representing? Do students have a lot of choice in the courses that they take, and if they have particular interests, are they able to take coursework related to those interests within the major?
I can go first from the Asian Studies side of things. So Asian Studies is a small major, which definitely has pros and cons, but a big pro in my opinion is that there's a lot of flexibility in terms of if you want to do a combined major or a double major or a double minor, or kind of maneuver your course of study a little bit during your time at Northeastern. Not only are you able to do that just from the like pre-established framework of courses that you're going to study as a part of the major, but also because it's a small major, you get to know faculty and your advisor and stuff really well. So people are definitely a lot more willing to help you kind of achieve your academic ambitions in terms of if you want to branch out a little bit and dip your toes in other fields of study.
Yeah, I would second that. I think I have loved my Spanish and International Affairs combined major because it hasn't felt like any class I've taken is just a required class. It just happens that there's so many classes that fit my interests, regional interest in Latin America and in Europe, as well as my interest in language. I've been able to take linguistics courses. And so I think the beauty, especially as being a language major as well as using international affairs, when I studied abroad, I pretty much was able to take whatever classes I wanted to in Spanish and then count it towards that language requirement, since I was using my language experiences in the country. And so what I have found is that if you have a class that you're interested in and you can sort of sell it as like, this is helping me and my studies, then they'll probably be able to find a way to incorporate that into your requirements.
Great, thank you. Do either of the faculty members want to weigh in on kind of just how the curriculum works and what kind of flexibility students have in the majors?
I can talk about the International Affairs major. And as I said before, the core classes are very limited. They're introductory classes in international affairs from different disciplines. But beyond these few core classes that are required, well, you are required to take any combination of classes that you're interested in that have a global focus. And then we recognize many of these classes as global dynamics classes. So you have to take a couple of global dynamics courses, but they can be anything from global health to international business. There are many ways in which you fulfill that requirement. So there is a lot of flexibility across disciplines, and in some cases even across colleges. And the other requirement is the regional analysis, which refers to choosing courses in a particular region, and that you're required to kind of concentrate in a particular region of the world. But this is completely up to you in terms of interest, which region interests you. And also you can choose any courses across the disciplines that focus on that particular region from the social sciences. So there is a lot of flexibility in structuring the particular schedule of courses across the 4 years of your study, or 5 years, very much according to your own interests. So there is a lot of embedded flexibility in addition to the combined majors that offer you also flexible choices, combining international affairs with several options across the social sciences, or combining a major in international affairs with a minor in another discipline.
Great, thank you. So on the same topic that Yuli was just talking about with combined majors, Natalie, I know that you're a combined major, and we have a question here about how is the workload for a combined major?
So combined majors, unlike double majors, sort of take the goals of each major and combine it and maybe take out a few classes, so that the number of classes you're taking is more similar to a single major than it would be if you're trying to do 2 majors at once. Within that, you know, especially with the Spanish major, it sort of depends on your level of competency coming into the school, whether how many classes you have to take. But the workload overall, I've found in my Spanish classes, but also in my international affairs classes, I've never found that it's a super, like, I've never been worried about getting an A. It's more that I've been able to put the work in to learn for myself. So especially when you're learning a language, whether I can pass a quiz or not isn't as important to me as whether I can hold a conversation in Spanish. And so that requires an extra workload, but that's more of something that I'm able to put in on top of it and follow my interest in language and culture because of the classes I'm taking and the way that classes sort of help me grow my interest and study on my own.
Great, thanks. So switching gears a little bit, we have a couple of questions about co-op. So Joni, can you talk about the average rate of pay for, this is specifically about international affairs majors on co-op, but also just more generally co-ops in CSSH?
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to say there's an average, but I guess if I had to say an average, I'd say anywhere between $15 to $21. I'd say that's kind of a range that, you know, some go above that, but generally, I'd say that's a solid range. I should also say, while we're on the topic of pay, there are some positions that are not paid, that are unpaid. And the reason for that is that they are often within organizations for whatever reason, maybe that they're a IGO or NGO and they don't have the financial capacity to pay, or a government organization that does not pay. But we do have scholarships that are available, and in particular, you probably have heard about the global scholarship that we offer for students, and that will basically pays students anywhere, or afford students anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000 to support them for a global co-op. So depending on where you were going, you know, obviously, you know, Geneva, it might not get you too far for that amount of money. You're going to want the upper end of that scale. But for some placements, you know, you can really, I just had a student accept a co-op in Cambodia, and we just kind of went through financially how he would support himself, and it's working out really, really well. So I would say in general for US based or domestic co-ops, anywhere from 15 to 21 is a solid range. And then we have also out of region and global co-op scholarships to fund those positions that may be unpaid.
Great, thank you. And then a follow-up question on global co-ops. Joni, do you have any examples of co-ops that are in China or Taiwan?
Ooh, well, I'm hoping to go to Taiwan myself to develop some co-ops whenever I can get on a plane and get over there. But I think that's a really great area, and you know, we hope to be developing some in that area. So it was Taiwan, and what was the other area, Michaela?
China.
Oh, China. We do have co-ops in China. It's been a little skewed from, you know, our COVID situation, right? So we have not been able to get students to these positions, but fortunately a lot of them, a lot of the co-ops that are in those areas have allowed for students to do those remotely. So we're hoping that once, you know, we make our way out of this COVID situation, we do have, you know, positions with a lot with NGOs, with educational organizations, you know, really a wide variety. It's just a matter of getting clearance at this point to get students over there. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then a question for our students, Andrew and Natalie. How did you decide that your major was right for you?
I can go first. So I think I actually, when I originally applied to Northeastern, I was an international business major. I was kind of unsure of exactly what I wanted to study or like do with my life. So as I think a lot of seniors feel that pressure when applying to college. And for me, I just had taken a honors level course on honors level seminar on Japanese history and politics post 1868 at my high school in Tokyo. And I think that for me was a lot more impactful because I focused a little bit less on the life that I wanted to lead in like a career oriented major and more pursuing a field of study and pursuing topics that I was interested in studying and doing research with at a college level. So yeah, I guess my personal experience was just figuring out which topics and fields kind of sparked my interest and following that through my academic path and endeavors.
I think like Andrew said, I sort of came into college with no idea what I wanted to do. And so I came in as a languages, literatures, cultures, and societies major, which was restructured into the Spanish and International Affairs combined major. And so I started taking classes within that major and decided that they were classes that really engaged my interest. And so I decided to continue on with that program and continue building my interest through my dialogues and studying abroad to sort of gain more of a regional focus in throughout my college years.
Great, thank you. And also a follow-up question related to majors. So the question is, are most students fluent in the world language in the region that they focus on? So this is a question, I guess, for Andrew. Are you fluent in Japanese? Natalie, are you now fluent in Spanish? And then Yuli, maybe if you want to weigh in on the language proficiency required for international affairs.
So fluency in the context of East Asian languages is a little bit difficult to come by. I grew up in Japan, so I'm comfortable doing like comfortably conversational, and all my research that I've conducted is all entirely been in Japanese over the past 2 years, and the research I'm doing now is also in Japanese, and all the contexts or all the contacts and stuff that I've been doing for field research has also been in Japanese. So I think most Asian studies majors have at least an intermediate high level of proficiency in that language, which I guess means conversation slash some research abilities in that language.
Yeah, fluency is definitely a hard concept to define just because there's so many different ways to look at it. But I would second what Andrew says, that I can definitely hold a conversation in Spanish. And my capstone research has taken place mostly in Portuguese and Spanish. So I am able to read reports at a high level and synthesize that information. So that's what I can contribute to my Spanish fluency.
To explain a little about the language requirement for international affairs, Northeastern has a language requirement of 2 semesters of a study of a particular foreign language. For international affairs major, we add another 2 semesters. So it's 4 semesters total. So that brings you up to intermediate level 2, which is not a level of really high fluency, but definitely puts you kind of at an advanced level in the study and understanding and use of that language.
Great, awesome. Thank you all for that. Natalie and Andrew, can you talk about your favorite courses that you have taken in your departments? And then maybe Yulia and Nicole, you can also highlight some classes that you think students might be interested in taking in your departments, any particular featured classes that you might want to highlight.
I can start with that one. I think, especially in the Spanish major, a few classes that have stood out to me are the more elective courses. And so when I was studying abroad, I took a class called Sociolinguistics. And then the semester I returned to Northeastern, I took a class called Exploring Spoken Spanish, which is a linguistics course based on how Spanish dialects differ across countries. And that course was fascinating because we actually, one of our assignments every week was to use an online platform to speak with native Spanish speakers in different countries. And so not only were we getting to learn about these linguistic differences in the language across regions, but we were getting to apply what we are learning to actual Spanish conversations. And I think that's just such a great representation of how in the CSSH program, you have such an experiential form of learning where you're not only learning knowledge, but applying it and reinforcing all of that you're learning.
For me, I'd say my favorite course was a seminar held by a PhD candidate at Harvard who came to Northeastern to teach this course on contemporary Chinese cinema. And I think that this is really representative of like how interdisciplinary the Asian studies major is in general, because it tied in high level like film theory and contemporary Chinese politics and Chinese history, and we would also kind of spend half the week just watching movies, basically educational movies, like it wasn't just TV, but as like case studies. And it was, yeah, really interesting to just have such a multifaceted or multidimensional view, I guess, of something as not foreign, but something like a new field, I guess, for me at least, which in that case was Chinese cinema.
I would like to highlight our introductory core course to the major in international affairs, which is globalization and international affairs. And the reason that this course is quite special and different from others is that within one semester, we study as many of the global problems as we can. So from 1 week studying the global economy and the international financial structures like the IMF, to studying the next week global poverty and underdevelopment, to going on to global health and the study of the pandemics, human rights and human trafficking. So it is such a varied course that you really don't usually find courses with such variety of topics in college. So this is a very exciting and a very comprehensive course when it comes to international studies.
So I'd like to mention two classes that will be offered by Africana Studies in the fall. One of them is called Gender and Black World Literatures. That's being taught by Moya Bailey. Moya Bailey is a scholar in our program who's coined the term misogynoir. Some of you might have heard about that term. It's used across the globe, basically to describe the ways in which sometimes online people challenge and undermine representations of Black women. So in this particular class, Gender and Black World Literature, she's focusing on, well, her topic is feminist futures, and she's looking at, in particular, the Black female writers and how they are working with science fiction. So looking at, say, Octavia Butler, as well as Nnedi Okorafor, and a bunch of other folks, but it should be a really incredibly cool class. And Moya usually knows a lot of the writers that she's teaching and frequently invites the writers to class. So that's always a wonderful option. And then just to follow up on Yuli's discussion a little bit earlier about areas of focus. One of the areas that you can focus on in international affairs, obviously, is Africa. Some of the elective classes you can take in our program, Africana Studies. One of those classes in particular that'll be offered in the fall is Contemporary Government and Politics in Africa. It's taught by Professor Kwamina Pamford, who is himself from Ghana, and he has a dialogue that he sometimes takes to Ghana. I also have another colleague, Richard Lamai, who has an incredibly popular dialogue where he takes students to Kenya. Yeah, those are our classes.
Great, thank you. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here this evening. And as we wrap up, so that will wrap up our Q&A portion of this session. If we didn't get to your question or you have follow-up questions, you can feel free to get in touch with me. I'll put my contact information on the screen in just a moment. And I also want to let you know about some of our upcoming events. So tomorrow we have a session on the international student experience in CSSH. So if anyone attending is an international student and is interested in that, then you can join us. We'll have a couple of students and our coordinator of international student programming, Justin Rapici, at that session tomorrow from 3:15 to 4 p.m. And then also on Thursday, April 27th, we have our final Q&A session. So we invite both students, admitted students and their families to that session to hear from representatives from our dean's office to have any final questions answered ahead of your May 1st deadline. And we are continuing our Meet Your Major series next week. So our final Meet Your Major sessions on next Tuesday, we have the Meet Your Major session for History, English, and our new History, Culture, and Law major. And then next Friday, we have a session, Meet Your Major for American Sign Language, Cultural Anthropology, Human Services, and Sociology. So if you're interested in any of these majors or have been accepted to a combined major with one of these majors, we invite you to attend that session. And this is my contact information. So like I said, if you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to answer what I can and put you in touch with the appropriate person if there's anything that I can't answer. And we also encourage you to follow our social media channels. We have Students of CSSH is our Instagram, where we have student takeovers and Q&As and feature upcoming events. So that will give you an idea of what it's like to be a student in CSSH. And then NUCSSH, we have another Instagram account, as well as our Facebook and Twitter account. So we encourage you to engage with us that way to continue to learn more about CSSH. So thank you again to our panelists and for all of the attendees for joining us this evening.